Welcome back. Now in the previous video you saw me take two pieces of laburnum and join them together book matched to produce an oyster, which looks like this. And this is for the headstock of my guitar. But I realised I could maybe do a better version of the join. Instead of book matching them, what I want to try to do is to join them that way, overlapped slightly. And what this will give me is this backward S shape, which complements the sort of the flowing nature of the headstock of my guitar, and it fully utilises the sapwood. So we have this lovely white, well, yellowish stripe going through the middle of the headstock, and I think that will look stunning. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to use a technique similar to what I believe is called a bandsaw inlay. This is where you take a piece of wood and you bandsaw it, nice wavy line usually. The two pieces come apart and then you glue them back together with a veneer in the middle. Now this is crucial because ideally the veneer should be the same width as the kerf of the bandsaw, and that way when you glue them all back together it all glues perfectly and you don't get any gaps. Let me show you what I mean with this little template that I've prepared here. So with the bandsaw inlay we have our sheet of wood, we cut out a nice feature, a nice little wavy line between the two pieces, and then we glue them back together, and now this represents our piece of veneer which we place in the middle, and clearly because the two pieces of wood haven't moved, two pieces of wood haven't moved, then it all glues back together perfectly and you don't get any gaps. But if we don't use the veneer, then when we glue them back together, because the inner curve is a tighter radius than the outer curve, you get all these gaps, and no matter how you try to arrange the pieces of wood, it's just hopeless. And in fact, if you try to sand down to try and improve the fit, you've got to sand what is really quite a lot off the bits to get the fat. So you see, more than the width of the cut you've got to take off the ends here to get it all to fit back together. Not a very good state of affairs. But there are ways we can improve matters. Example number 2, straight lines. But straight lines at a particular angle. What I've done here, if I take out our kerf, I've got all my angles regular here. We've got symmetry going on, and the width of the cut across each angle is the same. So when we slide the two halves together, they match perfectly. But we don't want to use straight lines. Not appropriate for veneer, but not really appropriate for bandsaw either. And I want to keep the natural flow of the headstock, so I need to have nice smooth curves. So we've got to come up with some sort of compromise that's halfway between the wavy line and this geometric straight line version. So example number 3 is a nice smooth curve, but a curve with a particular feature in that we start out in this direction and we come over this way and then we come back again, but we never come past the direction we started in. We go that way and we come back to that original direction, but we never come over and come back on ourselves. So what we have is, when we bring the two halves together, we have, as we'd expect, this big gap between them, but to a large extent by sliding them down a little bit, and remember this is only a tiny bit, this is like a millimetre or so because this is just the width of the bandsaw kerf. By sliding them together we can almost completely eliminate the gap. This is a fraction of the width of the kerf. And by shaving a small little amount off, really only about a third of the width of the kerf, which is going to be 1/4 of a millimetre. I think the kerf of my bandsaw is less than a millimetre. By just taking a little bit off the corners here, well, not really corners, but yeah, then we can get an almost perfect fit by using the feature that we can slide down this way. So we've got a little bit of a mismatch at the ends, but that's not what we're worried about. We just wanted to get as best a fit as we can. So all we've done there, we've now got a perfect fit, and all we've done is we've just taken a little bit, a fraction of the width of the kerf, off the protruding corners, the inner curves, and we only have here 2 curves, symmetrical. So I'm hoping that by doing the cut to join the 2 pieces together like this, cutting through both pieces of wood and then bringing them together, by keeping the curve simple, I can get it almost perfect first time, and then perhaps just a little bit of teasing, just a little bit of sanding on the corners to just get a perfect fit between the 2. That's what I'm hoping. I don't know how easy this is going to be, but that's the plan. So this is what I'm going to do. With a bit of experimentation, I came up with a cut template, and I've created an overall template by copying this twice, rotating it, and by rotating it around the midpoint between the 2 ends of the cut, I've got a nice straight piece here, so that I can bring everything across to just match everything up. If this doesn't make sense, hopefully the doing of it will illustrate this all. So I'm not going to attempt to make each of these cuts independently. What I'm going to do, just as like a bandsaw inlay, I was going to say just as for a bandsaw inlay, but a bandsaw inlay is a single piece of wood. I am going to join these 2 pieces of wood together. I'm going to glue them to a baseboard using masking tape and super glue, and I'm going to use another piece of wood as a spacer, so that that's glued, and then this is glued onto here. I'm going to leave the edge free just so I can get everything lined up. Glue those onto the baseboard, and then glue this onto this piece so it's all held in place. And then I'm going to cut along the line which I've traced out on the top piece using the template. And then, because I'm cutting through both pieces together, remove all the excess wood, and those 2 pieces should slot together almost exactly. And then I suspect I'm just going to have to sand very, very carefully, just take a little bit off each peak, and then everything just comes together nicely. That's the hope. And of course the headstock will then fit beautifully over the top, and we'll have this lovely piece of sapwood without some of the more dirty pieces and without the slight crack here. And I'm hoping it will look great. I really hope it looks great. I guess we're just going to have to find out and do it. went pretty well. It almost went very wrong because I drifted quite a bit off the curve. The curve here was tighter than I anticipated and I was going a bit quick. But I wanted to keep it smooth. I didn't want any movements of the bandsaw. I wanted to keep everything smooth and keep it rotating smoothly, which I've achieved. But it did mean drifting a couple of millimetres off the line, but it's worked because, as you can see, I have a pretty good match. There's a very, very slight gap here and here. So I've got to try, if I can, to just very carefully sand a little bit off those edges, either completely on the one piece or perhaps just take the top off both sides. The cut is actually quite smooth. I don't think I need to tidy the cut up. Keeping it running nice and smoothly and regularly has given me a very good cut. It's a shame the colour of the sapwood doesn't quite match here, but I don't think an invisible join was ever really the intention. I think that will look quite good. Next challenge is to get this off the baseboard without breaking it, and I think we're going to be okay. There we go. And presumably this one's going to come up equally easily. I don't want to just pull it up because this is end grain and it's quite fragile. Right. Let's see how subtle we can be with our sanding. But it has to be said that's a very good join already. But you can see how there's a gap at each end. I just got to take a little bit off the peaks. I think I might sand both halves actually, and then we join the two halves together. A spindle sander would be way too brutal to sand this. I wouldn't be able to control what I was taking off. However, without it running, if I just run this along the edge of the sander. Need a way of locking that really, but then at least it will just tidy up the edge, as I've decided that there is a little bit of there are some saw marks. Yeah. I wonder if I could lock this somehow. This is some sort of tile wedge. If I just force it in there, then I think that's locked it. So I'm just here I'm just tidying up the edge. I'm not actually improving the fit, I don't think, but I will check the fit after I've done this. Just give it a couple of passes. This is 150 grit, I think. Yeah, still the same fit. I'll give it another few passes. Now these are the passes intended to improve the fit. Nearly there. that's as good a fit as I think I'm going to get. The process was holding it up to the light and then just seeing where it touched and then just sanding gently at that area, and just keep going until I'd got a perfect fit. What I didn't want to do is stick a piece of paper, sandpaper, between the two halves and then sand, because as small as the effect is, I'd be introducing what would effectively be a sandpaper kerf, and it may have worked, but the way I did it worked just as well. Yeah, maybe you could do it that way, but whatever the width of the sandpaper is, you could be introducing slight inaccuracies. Maybe not, I don't know, but I got it to work this way by just sort of doing it by eye, just seeing it where it touched and then sanding away until we've got what is really quite a good fit. That's flat, but this clamp should ensure that. Actually, before I just clean it before I clamp it. It went really well. Get a look at that. That's probably completely blurred, but never mind. I've made a template, a see-through template, and this is what the headstock will look like. Isn't that brilliant? I do, of course, still have the first version with the book-matched oyster, and it will look like that. But I reckon that's the one. Comments in the comments section. This will get turned into a guitar at some point, I think. Maybe the next one. I'm not exactly in full-scale production here. When both of these will get used, I don't know. It'll be a moment in the future. Yeah, make sure you're subscribed, and then you will see the video at some point when this eventually goes on the headstock. But I am very pleased with this. So we'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next video.